Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Backyard Peace Project on our Wednesday session. And we had a little trouble with the link this morning. 100% my fault. I'm not even going to try and hide behind anything. So I'm really sorry if you wanted to get on and couldn't. It was my problem with programming. I did the wrong thing. So I apologize. But here we are with our experts. We're having amazing things happen inside and for the Backyard Peace Project. So please do stay tuned, watch this space because so much magic is rippling through right now. So I really want you to be part of that. So on a Wednesday, we come together. We have sometimes uncomfortable conversations because we think it's really important to put that out into the world and model how to have uncomfortable conversations. Oftentimes, these Wednesdays are me coming in saying, "This is how I messed up this week. Discuss." Or I've been in emotional pain. I know that Paul and I actually jumped on a call. It was just the two of us one time, and I was really struggling. And I shared with him, I'm really, really struggling right now. I'm in a lot of emotional pain, and he actually coached me through that on the call. So I think it's really important to come up, be real, be raw, be vulnerable, because it gives other people permission to do the same. And I think that perfectionism stops us from progress. And I really feel it's important to come up and go, we're all works in progress. My comfort zone might be larger than yours, but it's taken years to build that. And each time I step into a new comfort zone where I dip my toe out of this one, all of the stuff comes up again. And I have to go back into the chrysalis where it's dark and messy and gloopy and scary. And I dissolve and I become a newer version of myself. So this is a work in progress, guys. The day that we're fully aligned and fully evolved is the day that we die, right? So we want to be evolving. I want to be evolving for the next 50 years, right? That's the goal. That's the task I've made with God. And so today we come together and we have these conversations. It's real, it's raw. All of my experts inside the Backyard Peace Project have lived experience. And that's so important to us. They haven't just got the qualifications and the expertise, they've actually lived it. And that brings a whole deeper richness to the support that you receive and the guidance that you get because these people have actually been through it. They've been through those chrysalises or chrysali, what is it? And they've come through the other
Crystals.
side and they want to share chrysalises. I don't know. I don't know. Multiple chrysalises.
Shiny
I don't know.
crystal.
Yeah. So we're really, really grateful to have you here. So I would love to talk, guys, today about the campaign that I've been part of this week, which is called hashtag kindness counts. And we've been really sharing these stories of kindness. Now, that sounds very fluffy, but of course, I've been bearing my soul all over social media of some of the hardest moments of my life and how I chose kindness. And I just wanted to talk today about the piece that I've brought to that conversation, I feel. And this is the piece that I brought on the live LinkedIn the other day when they were talking about the campaign, was kindness is not always easy, and I really feel like we don't talk about that enough, because some of the things I shared on social media, they're some of the hardest decisions I've ever had to make. And I had to work through some really big emotions, like what we would term negative emotions. I believe they're just all emotions there to serve us, but we label them as negative. And I've had to work through anger. I've had to work through revenge. I've had to work through feelings of almost wanting violence because you feel so protective over your children, right? But I've had to work through that to get to kindness. And I think this is a really important point, is that we're not just hardwired for this stuff. It has to be done with intention and purpose. And so the things that I've been sharing in the Kindness Counts campaign has been, this was a really challenging situation. I felt all of my emotions. I didn't deny them. I didn't pretend they weren't happening, but I felt all of the emotions in private, waited till I was recalibrated back to love, and then responded. That pause piece is so, so important. And I feel as well like the people that deserve our kindness the least need it the most. And that presents a challenge of and within itself. And as you guys know, you know me well, there's been times when my children have been hospitalized. And still, I've had to sit with my big feelings, sit with my reactions until I've recalibrated, ready to respond from an intelligent, heart-centered space. But this is not easy. And we see like celebrities going hashtag kindness, oh, be kind, choose to be kind, blah blah blah. Agreed. But what does that look like? Because it's
Mm.
very rarely glitter and rainbows and angels singing. It's bloody painful and it's scary, and there's a lot of work to be done to get to that place. So I kind of wanted to. I don't want it to be a negative conversation, but I want it to be real. Like, it's hard to be kind sometimes, and I think that we need to acknowledge that. I'm opening it up to you guys. Just another easy topic for a Wednesday, but what are your
I
thoughts?
just I just love how you said, I waited till I've recalibrated back to love.
Yeah, but it's hard.
You make
It's
it sound so
hard.
easy, and there is so much work in just that little
So
sentence
much
that you just
work.
floated
Yeah.
out into the, oh my God, I love it.
Yeah. But it is so
Yeah.
it's tough. It's tough when somebody's hurt your baby. Like, you have
Mm.
to really work with that, because it is
Um,
hard. It is really,
mm.
really hard at times.
Yep.
Sometimes it's easy to be kind. And those are the great times when you're like, oh, this is easy, no problem. But sometimes, especially when that person is not showing the behavior or the communication style or the connection that
Mm.
attracts kindness,
Yeah.
it's
Mm.
tough.
And it's a muscle build at the
Mm.
core of it. When you talk about the difference between reacting and responding, it's when you've formed a neural pathway that actually, like you've said, it's that the pause in that space. It's the where's my brain taking me? If I can bring it back, stop for a moment, drop into that space of, "Phew, what do I know of this? What's my instinct here?" And then go, hang on a sec, this isn't going to serve the bigger picture. So if it's the space you're living from, and what's the outcome that you want to redirect this, whatever it is, the discombobulation that's taking place, where do you want to take that? Yeah. And as you've done the muscle build, as you've done the small things of kindness is easy today, but in the moment when it's not, well, what have you got in the bank behind you that says, I've got this? I've done something here before. This feels familiar. I can go towards this. Okay, it's just going to take a bit more this time. We've added a few more hefty weights onto it to lift. Yeah.
It's also about understanding that it's a natural thing for your brain to protect you. And that's all it's doing at this time. It's like fight back, run away, hide, or do something because this is going to a threat.
Yeah.
So it is about that pause to be able to go, okay, I need to get the CEO brain back online here because at the moment the antiquated lizard brain's taken over and all I want to do is punch them out. But in fact, that's where I think the pause is really handy. And again, as Deidre says, the more times you do it, then you get those pathways and you can just say, okay, it's all right, we've got this, talk to yourself about it and calm down. But in that instant, it's natural to want to do something to protect.
It's such a, I guess when you're in the emotion and you have built the muscles, that is the reaction. To shift out of emotion in that moment is where the challenge is, isn't it? So even with the pause, we could still be in that reactive state because our body creates the energy. It could rage, stress, overwhelm, whatever it needs to survive and to put yourself into that place. And this is why I love even working with the mindfulness, but tapping into the breath, which naturally starts and shifts your nervous system into out of that fight or flight. So you have time long enough to pause. Because once you get that pause, you get the space, of course. I've used this multiple times over the last few weeks because the kids have been home from school on holidays. So I've had to pause a lot. But the the biggest thing that I've been using, not only for myself but also for my son, even this morning going back to school, it gets quite emotional. So it's like helping with that pause moment to shift out of the emotional response, either fight, flight, or shut down in those moments, is a natural thing that we do. It's just like an automated sigh. It's like, so if you get conscious of that, it's an easy muscle to build for that pause. And if you do it with an open mouth, it actually resets that nervous system quicker. And been using this, whatever's been going on in the world in the last few weeks in my classes, we've been tapping into softer, subtler breath work practices. And I've been using that one, and everyone's like drops really quick out of their tense body stresses of the week, the day, the year. And I find that really helps quickly. And then obviously you get the mind after that, because you get back into rational thinking.
I've been using that, Paul, even waking up in the middle of the night and just starting to, get a bit of anxiety and just do a couple of breaths, and I find, I wake up in the morning and go, I must have gone back to sleep.
Yeah,
So,
it's brilliant, isn't
it can
it?
work very, very quickly, can't it?
Yeah. Yeah, I use that a lot too. And sometimes if your mind just gets busy at that 2, 3 in the morning moment, blockbuster movie kicks in.
That's
It's
right.
about,
Catastrophize the world.
yeah, and finding kindness for yourself instead of being, oh, you should be sleeping. You've got these things to bring the kindness in, as we always sort of bring it back to you, so then you can share the kindness out. Mm.
I think what I find quite interesting, what came up for me listening to all of you, is when we have sometimes kindness just happens, like it's the way we were raised, be kind. And I often think of that when Ellen DeGeneres always finishes her shows with "be kind to one another," and I always thought I often finish sessions of mine with "be kind to yourself," because we always forget that part, the self-love, the self-care, kindness to oneself, and all those things. And we have a lot of reminders all over the place to be kind to one another, but not enough to be kind to oneself. But when I was listening to what you shared, Kathy, about the challenge, the game, whatever you want to call it, that you're part of now, the 5 days of posting about kindness, I thought, what is our intention behind that? When we are kind to someone. And I sometimes caught myself, I'm not proud of it, but this is raw and open, right? Sometimes I caught myself being kind to somebody because I was expecting a certain reaction. And that reaction that I expected or was hoping for would have been for bonding, for a beautiful moment. So it would have been a win-win situation, not just from a selfish point of view. But sometimes people don't respond in a way that you were thinking. Like a perfect, simple example, letting a stranger in front of you in a car, And it's like, you didn't say thank you.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like,
You're
I'm
welcome.
so nice to you. You're
Yeah.
welcome. Exactly that.
Yeah.
Bye. It's that sort of, and that always, like, I laugh about it. I often chuckle about it when I catch myself in that moment. But it is also a good reminder for myself, is like, why am I doing this? Am I doing that to be seen as a nice person, to get that instant reward of feeling great about myself, that, oh, I let a stranger in the lane in front of me. I know there are such silly little examples, but it is a really good reflection of what do I actually expect. And the thing that I want to really work on is to be kind, not just to other people, but also to myself, without any expectation, to really just be that and ooze kindness. And more often than not, that is something that comes easier and easier to me. But I still have those moments where I'm like, ooh, there was expectation there, right, Marie? And I try to pick myself up on that, because I don't want to be that person. I don't want to be in that space to be kind to someone just to get the thank you, the wave, the smile, the whatever, to be seen as that kind person. It's not about how you are seen in this world, as how you are in this world, really. And that is just something that is a really big thing for me to work on that, because I think it's going to make the world an even kinder place if we can all do that.
I love that, Marie. And it's so fun because we actually went out for lunch, I don't know, 6 weeks ago. And we'd met Sky we meet halfway because she lives far away now. And Ian was home, and I said, oh, let's meet up. Otherwise you might not see her, for another sort of 4-5 weeks. And so we met up for lunch, and there was this old guy sat, and he came into the restaurant. We were in our favorite Asian restaurant, and he was there, and he had his soup and a glass of water. And the way that he was interacting with the waitress, I felt like he's come to eat, so he's not on his own. Do you know what I mean? That's the vibe I got, that he was this old guy, he had this really cute little tartan cap on. He was making the waitress laugh. He was having all this, it's really cute. And we were there with two of our kids and whatever. And I just looked at Ian and winked, and he winked back, which meant we can pay for his meal, right? Because I just want to double check. Anyway, I went up to, and I don't always do that. I don't go up to every single old man and go, I'm going to pay for your lunch. Yeah, that's my thing. But now and again, you get the urge, you get this is something, I need to do this today. Do you know what I mean? You get that pull. And so I went up, paid for our meal, and then I said, and table 38 or whatever it was. And he went, well, that's not your table. I said, no, I know, but I said, we'd just like to buy him lunch. And he said, oh, right. And it was this old Asian guy. And he went, I'll go and tell him. I went, no. And then he went, what? And I went, wait till we've gone. I said, don't do it now. And then we're like scrambling to get out of the restaurant because I didn't want him to see that it was us. I didn't want him to feel embarrassed. I didn't want him to feel, I just wanted to have that little drop of love. And then, but I was like really panicking. Then I was like, get your stuff, get out, because he's going to tell him. Run. Yeah. I don't know if the Britishness in me or what, but I loved what you said, Marie, about being, right? Because I'll tell you a story that happened to us yesterday. So Ian flew home Monday night. And so Tuesday, the day I refused to get out of my pajamas, he went down to the local shop because we've got no food in because I'm a terrible mother, right? And so he went, we need some food. I said, go and get some food in for tonight. I've not had any time. And so he went to the local shop, and in the local shop, in our little supermarket, Drake's, he said this guy who came in with his son, and they were in high vis, and they were obviously working for the day. They were dirty and all of the things, and he'd come in to grab whatever. And he heard this guy shout, what are you effing looking at? So I don't know if you've ever met my husband, but like if he was in America, he'd be a cowboy. He's big, he's sturdy, he's got this big beard. He's like, Rrr! He's South African. Do you know what I mean? He's like this big burly bloke. And people look at us and go, well, how did you get with him? I went, I don't know. Like 32 years. I don't know. We've lived lifetimes together. And Ian sort of turned like, are you talking to me? Do you know what I mean? Like, what's going on? And and he was telling me the story, so I'm really listening. And anyway, what was interesting, and this is 32 years of influence that I've had over my burly husband, is that he said, and I turned to look at him, and I was ready. Do you know what I mean? Like if he was ready. And he said, and do you know what I was going to say? And I was like, I don't know what you're going to say. Please continue. He said, I was going to say, hey, mate, do you want to go for a pint? And I went, I love that. I love that you did that. I'm so proud of you. And he said, because we don't know what they're going through. And I'm like, 32 years of conditioning, baby. But, I love that was his response, was this person is aggravated. They're being aggressive. They're, attacking strangers, verbally. Something's up. Mm. And I love that was his response. And as you were saying, Marie, it's not what shall I do? It's who do I want to be?
Yeah.
And I love that distinction of, we're often, as Judy said, we're in this lizard mind of protection, and that's for survival. And times that's completely appropriate. I mean, for me as a woman in that situation, I'd be more cautious about approaching that man because he's elevated, because he's being aggressive. So I would have to trust my guidance in that situation, whether I step forward or I step back, right? Because that's what our protective instincts are for. But definitely to try and be the person. And one of my posts, I put, in situations when it's challenging, I think if I was that person, who would I need in that moment? And can I be beautiful. That person for them?
Yeah.
And as I said, it's not always easy, but if we have the intention of doing that, and we get it right 85% of the time, 60% of the time, that would make a big impact. Philippa.
Yeah. I think I loved what you said there, Marie, about being kind to yourself. I think it actually needs to start there for all of us, because the way that we treat others should be a reflection of how we treat ourselves. And and I did a post this morning about, the mother wound and how, we often it's actually that wound that tells us we're not worthy of doing the work on ourselves, that we're not worthy to invest in, to spend the money on, that we have to put ourselves last. But actually, the greatest gift we can give our children is to, heal ourselves. And what we do for ourselves flows forward. And I think we
Yes.
talked about this last week, the week before, because last week I was on a cruise without my children. Um, um, and
Throwing it in there.
but we talked about the idea that it flows forward, and that what we do for ourselves and our children are actually watching how we treat ourselves more than they're watching how we treat them. And if we are not genuinely kind to ourselves, then how do we expect our children to be kind to themselves or others in a really genuine way? And if we are kinder to others than we are to ourselves, then we're actually there's a key ingredient that's missing there, and it will continue to haunt you forever if you don't treat yourself with that same level of kindness. I think it took me a really, 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 really long time to get that. And one of the things I loved about the TRTP training was the understanding because when you're working with a client, obviously part of it is what does the client need to think, feel, or experience in order to be okay in this moment. But when I teach that piece to my clients, when I'm saying, okay, moving forward, I want you to think about, what do I need to think, feel, or experience in this moment to be okay? And you said that too, Kathy, right? What does this person need, and can I deliver that? But if we just start even by giving that to ourselves, what do I need in this moment to think, feel, and or experience to be okay, to be well, then we've got a really quick, easy answer on how to frame everything for ourselves, and what to deliver for ourselves moving forward. And I think it's easy enough to remember, right? Like it's one thing to think about. What do I need right now? Because we often put ourselves so far down the totem pole, and we're, especially as parents, right? We're constantly putting everybody else ahead of ourselves, but it's actually not going to serve us or our kids to do that. And
I couldn't
it
agree
comes
more.
back to that giving from the saucer, right? Instead of giving from your cup. I keep trying to, people are like, Phil, you got to have a full cup. You got to have a full cup. No, you have to have an overflowing cup. And when
Yes.
you've got overflow, because your cup is for you, the overflow, the saucer, that's for everybody else. And that includes your children. And I get how hard that is, because I have a lot of children, and it is not, and they
And only
have,
one cup.
only one cup, right? And they have lots of needs, and they have, they have things that they, and does that mean, like, I felt somewhat guilty this weekend, or this last week, it was my daughter's 23rd birthday and we were gone, right? And then during that week, she also had a miscarriage. And she wasn't planning a pregnancy. She didn't know she was pregnant. It was very early. She was only a week late, but I wasn't there for that. But instead of feeling like I'd let her down, and I would have loved to have been there to support her through that. That's, that's part of what I create for my kids. But what I did do was create an opportunity for my children to support each other. And so because I'm not going to be here one day, and they're going to need each other. So rather than me being the hero again, and having to step into that, or feeling guilty and ruining my holiday, I created a pathway for them that still showed kindness, but allowed them to show kindness to each other as well. Again, just thinking about, what does she need? She needed somebody to, to be nurturing and nourishing. Well, she has three sisters, they were there for that.
That's awesome.
And so everybody got a heads up, and everybody pulled together, and that is a gift as well,
But
but if
also,
I
Philippa, that's years and years and years and years and years of you pouring into that. So then that moment has been, this is what you've done, all of the foundational work that you've done. And I'm really, really sorry for your loss as well.
It was hard I mean, obviously she's 23. She doesn't really want another baby right now or but it was bittersweet, and there was all the emotions that she had to go through in that space. And I had to go, and I was sad. I messaged her. I said, I'm actually feeling really sad. But again, I needed to show kindness to myself in that first piece. And in showing kindness to myself, I was able to show kindness to everybody else and create something that was more powerful. So it flows outwards. And I think we shouldn't ever forget that what we do for ourselves flows on, one way or the other.
Yeah, I think
Yes,
that's beautiful, Philippa,
100%.
honestly. And I think as well, adding on to what you said there, I think it's so important because I've had moments where my kids have reached out to me and I've got nothing because I'm so depleted, I'm so tired, I've had a massive day. And I do respond by saying, I am really glad you brought this to me. I'm going to circle back to you tomorrow because I've got nothing in the tank today, and I feel okay to say that to them, and they're good at receiving that. And one of the things I led a session for 90 minutes this morning before this call. And one of the things we were discussing was like generosity and kindness versus overgiving. And where does the overgiving come from? It comes from the fawn, often in the fight, flight, freeze fawn of I'm going to ingratiate myself to you and to everybody around me so that I don't become a target of whatever you might be dishing out, right? And to the point of depletion. And we were sort of unpacking what that meant. And so it's really great to have that self-awareness of am I giving from the saucer or am I giving because I don't want to deal with any uncomfortable situations that might arise if we say no. I'm okay with saying no. I think we've all established that. But a lot of people do struggle with that. And I understand because I did it one time as well. Struggle with saying no, struggle with my boundaries. How was I going to be seen? What did that mean for me? And I'd heard something in a lecture many years ago, and they were saying, it doesn't have to be your thing. And what they meant by that was, when you go in the street and 119 charities ask you for a donation, right? And you feel like the worst person in the world because you've just given a big thing to somebody and then they're asking you again and you say no and then you feel guilty and all of the things. And they were saying, not everything has to be your thing. Everybody has their own thing. And so being able to say children's charities are my thing. I don't give to animal charities because my children are my thing. Do I hate animals? No. I've got the oldest guinea pig in the world who's treated like a queen, right? I love my animals dearly, but somebody else is going to give to the animals. I'm going to give to the kids, right? And I don't need to feel guilty about not giving to the animals because I know somebody else is going to do that. It's all good. And so we don't need to take on everything. We can streamline and just feel what we feel capable from the saucer, like Philippa said, of what we're able to give. And that's my thing. I give to kids and I'm okay with that, and I know someone else is going to be super passionate. I care for the puppies and the kittens, but I know somebody else is going to jump in and do that for me. I don't have to have everything.
Can I just throw something in there as well? Because this is really, really important, and it's something really big on my heart. The whole idea of, giving from the overflow, giving from the saucer. I love it. I've actually done posts about it. I remember finding a photo with red overflowing juice. It was perfect for the post and all of that. And this is, the perfect life, If we are in a perfect scenario, we give from the saucer, all of that. But we have all been in a transition. We all know that it's not always reality, that we only give from the saucer. So coming back to what example we are being for our children, I want to be that example where my children learn how to deal with it when their cup is half empty and they still need to give. And I believe, will all be in situations where that is the case. When Rob died, I didn't have the luxury to say, hey, can you just wait for 10 years till I've done my deep healing and then I'll be there and give from overflow and look after you guys? No, I had 2 children to raise on my own that were 10 and 8, and I didn't feel sorry for myself. So many people, especially in interviews, always ask me, that must have been so hard. And I'll just look at them and I'm like, can you just stop saying that? Because I'm not looking at it from that lens. If I'm looking at it from that lens, I'm drowning. I'm looking at the lens from, this is such a gift, you know, I get to raise my children. Not I got to, I get to. This is such a gift. I come from this whole change of coming from this victimhood thing to this is an actual gift that I get to raise my children, you know. But did I do it from overflow? No. I didn't have enough to give from overflow. My cup was half empty and my sole purpose was still filling theirs. But at that age, of course, they felt it. Don't get me wrong. It's nothing that you can fake or mask, and children don't get it. They feel it. If they can understand it at that age, is a different scenario. But they certainly felt it. And the more I realized what was happening, the more I healed, the more I could claim some sort of outside perspective of my situation, the more I realized where I needed to start tweaking and changing things to fill my cup to eventually be able to give from the saucer. And I think that's really important to throw in there, because we don't all have that luxury. And that doesn't have to take an adversity, you know, it can take anything that you are in this situation where you don't have the luxury to give from your saucer. But I feel the end sentence, or the essence of all of that I want to get to, is always, what do we make with that? You know, what we've been given. And I think that is where the preciousness lies in all of the teaching that I want my children to learn. What do you do with that? What's presented to you? You know, how do you deal with it when your cup's half full? I had this most beautiful conversation. I might have shared it before, but I don't think so, not in this setting. I tried to explain to my younger son, because he's such a giver. He's got such a huge heart, and he's always like giving, giving, giving. And that afternoon, and over actually preparing dinner, I explained to him that analogy, you know, you can't pour from an empty cup. And he was sitting there, and he might have been 11, 12, I don't know, maybe even younger, probably younger. Anyway, and we're sitting at the dinner table, just the three of us, and they all have their big glass of water, and Flynn finished his, and he looked at Jed's, and his was full. Perfect analogy, right? And he said, "Hey, Jed, can I have some of your water?" And Jed was like, "Yeah, sure." And he took his glass and poured the entire glass into his. And I just looked at this happening. Nobody said anything. And I said to Jed, "See, that's exactly what I explained to you this afternoon." He said, "What do you mean?" I said, "Well, Flynn asked you some of your water. You gave him all of it. He already had his share. He could have gotten up and got it. I think it's beautiful that you share with him, but you didn't have to give him all of yours." He said, "But why?" And I said, "Because now your cup is empty. Now you've got nothing left to give." Do you know what his response was? I can still give him my glass, Mum.
Hmm.
And I'm like, where do I start with that? You know, I'm trying to teach him such a
Just
beautiful
been
lesson. And he's like, I
bamboozled.
can still give him my glass. And I was gobsmacked. I'm like, that's not the lesson I wanted to give you, you know. It was beautiful. But yeah, I think it's really all coming back to teaching them how you respond to what you have. I think Chica wants to join in as well.
I think there's two things you
Very
said
loud.
there, Marie, that are important. One of them
Yeah.
is that there are going to be times when we're not going to have overflow and where we're going to have to give, and
Yeah.
that's okay if it's not all the time. So it's like resilience, right?
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely.
Resilience is important. We have to have it, but we're supposed to have it for moments in time, not for forever. We're not, if we're sitting there all the time in resilience, we're stuck. But if we are moving in and out of it, which is how our nervous system is designed to work. It's designed to peak and then calm, and peak and then calm. But if we are always up here, then we're not ever actually sitting in resilience. We're just stuck in hyperdrive, right? And that's not good either. So when you're absolutely right. Sometimes we are going to have to pull up our big girl pants and soldier on and do what we have to do, but it shouldn't be what we consider to be normal. And there are too many parents who start parenting, and even just people in life, right? They start life and they're in this space where they feel like they need to, that if they're not stuck in hyperdrive, they're actually not performing, they're actually not doing it right. And I think what we ideally want to do is change the narrative so that actually, yeah, you can be there sometimes, but not all the time. That's actually not where you're meant to live. And normalize taking care of ourselves and being kind to ourselves. And look, this is a huge culture shift because it actually doesn't exist within our culture, you know, like it's funny, my sister, who is the best at the self-care, like this woman for years, I looked at her and I went, what the actual fuck? Like how, you know, she prioritizes her own stuff over everybody else and always has, right? And I looked at that, and for a very, very long time, I found it very hard. I couldn't do any of that stuff, and I don't do it the way she does it. But what's interesting is, as a grandmother and leaning in and supporting my daughter, my sister has applied judgment about what she thinks my daughter is entitled to in terms of support and love. And so and sometimes she catches herself and sometimes she doesn't. But even for somebody who believes in her own self-care, she's like, well, that's fine for me, but not for everybody. Do you know what I mean? Like it's been really interesting to watch. And I know where it comes from. It comes from her mother wound. Because her mother wound goes deeper than mine. She hasn't talked to my mother for, I don't know, 10 years. But it comes from that place of self-sacrifice is the only way to be a good mother. And it's just so not true. The other thing that you said, I can't remember because it's fallen off the plate.
Fair enough. Yeah.
That's all right.
I live there a lot. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think as well, when you were talking, what was coming up for me is what we're giving. Because I remember when I had Taya, obviously everything went wrong. She came 2 months early. I wasn't ready. The whole thing was just not great. And then I had an emergency C-section. I nearly didn't come out of that. Ian worked 7 hours away. It was a really difficult time. And I had my first premature baby. I didn't know what to do with her, to be honest, because it's different when you have a prem. It wasn't the same as my other babies. And it was really, really hard. And I remember that year, it took me a long time to get over that surgery. I was battered, I was bruised. It was traumatic being away from her for the week that she was in hospital. Then they let her come home, but then I had a lot of pressure to keep her putting weight on, etc., etc. I had my eldest at that time was 13, so I had all of these children in the house, no family here. It was really hard, and that whole year, because then I had another surgery. And then I got really bad flu, like this kind that knocks you off your feet. But of course, you can't stop because you've got all these kids and you got this baby. And I remember even the Coles delivery driver came in and he just looked at me and he went, oh my God. I went, I can't. And he was like, oh my God. He actually stayed and unpacked all my groceries.
Oh,
because he said, I've
him.
never seen
Oh
you
God.
look like that. He said, you look so ill. He said, I feel so sorry for you. I went, I can't do anything right now. And I was just so sick. And that year, we got to the end of the year, and I was in the last assembly of the school, and all of my kids won awards. And I sat there feeling really emotional. And my thought was, I got away with it. And the reason that I thought I got away with it, because I felt like I'd given nothing that year, because I was in survival. I was trying to keep Taya surviving. I was trying to survive. I really feel like that year for me was survival. And so in my mind, I gave very little. Yeah, because the standard that I'd set for myself, I came nowhere near that standard that year. So when they all won academic awards, I felt emotional because I thought, oh my God, thank God, like they haven't, I haven't sabotaged their year, But I do feel like we need to start reframing what it is we're giving. We don't have to give to this nth degree. Do you know what I mean? We can just give a little bit and it makes a big difference. And one of the stories I shared for this kindness counts campaign was a friend of mine. Her son went to combat. He was 20 and he went into a combat situation for 6 months on the front line. And of course, she was really upset and she was very concerned about him. She's her mom, his mom, I get it. So what I did was I got these little pebbles, and on the pebbles there was a word like faith or love or dreaming or whatever it was. It was just these little pebbles with these little words of affirmation, really. And then when I knew she'd be at work, I'd scoot by her place, pop it in the mailbox, and scoot away again. She never knew it was me. But that became a lifeline for her. And she would say to me, I don't know who's doing it, but I've got these things. And I really sort of it lifts my spirits going to the letterbox because I'm wondering if there's one in there today. And I just popped one in a week. It didn't cost me anything, right? About a little bit of my time. But it made a big impact to her. And I think this is where we get stuck as well sometimes is we feel that our level of kindness isn't flamboyant enough or big enough or whatever, but it's these little things upon which we build our lives.
I love that. I read that story when you shared it, and I thought that is so beautiful, And it comes back to what I said before. It's the not expecting anything in return. That is really the highest goal for me in terms of kindness for myself, as well as teaching that to my children. And that's really beautiful. Run, people, don't let him know we paid a bill.
Run! Don't make eye contact. But I mean, as well, it's karma. So you put good in, you get good back. From that person, probably not, but from another place in the universe, it's going to come back to you. So it's about pushing out love, pushing out kindness, pushing out generosity to the point that you feel that you can, and not expecting it back from that particular person. But it comes back to you. It does. Like karma works both ways. It works for the not so good and it works for the great, So that's another thing maybe that will help you, Marie, in your journey is I'm just going to give and I'm going to let go of that giving. I'm just going to give and let it go into the universe. And then I know it's going to come back to me in some kind, in some way, in some person, really unexpectedly. And that's going to be fun to discover.
Yeah.
And I think that's why the small acts of kindness is really worth emphasizing, because if we have to stop and think what's something we can do and it's big, it just means we'll stop, or people will stop because it's hard to come up with something. But 10 times a day you can do something small for somebody, kindness in the supermarket, and pass them what they're reaching into the fridge and nearly knocking you over to get, instead of your elbows in them and moving them to the side so you can get what you want. There's any number of things.
And as you're saying that with as well, that having the boundary. I mean, I've been the person in the supermarket. You can imagine when I go food shopping, we're a big family. It's a lot of stuff. And I will let people in front of me. Yeah, but there's been times when there's 11 people with 3 things. And at some point I'm going to go, not you. I've given enough now. It's my turn, or I'm never going to get out of it. Do you know what I mean? So it's okay to say no. It's okay to say no. I've done. That's my bit done now. Let's just have some reasonable boundaries.
It's interesting when we talk about that kindness doesn't cost us anything, because there's something in me that kind of, when I hear it, I kind of, there's a resistance to it, because I think if we don't have the capacity to act from kindness, but we do it anyway, like we find it, we borrow from somewhere to do that, that kind of speaks to me that there's something not quite right for me that I need to consider and look at. That why can't I be kind in that moment? It's more of a moment to take the pause and reflect and go, what do I need to do for me? I was with my little granddaughter, she's 7, and her parents are hyper religious. And this was yesterday morning. And she was like, Grammy, Grammy, Grammy. I'm like, dude, take a beat. I'm just cooking your breakfast. And she goes, you're being mean to me. You need to be kind. And I'm like, kindness. Okay. What do you mean I was being mean? I just went, hang on, just take a moment. And as I sat with her while she was eating breakfast, and I said, like just asking her about the whole concept of kindness. And it's very much from that biblical point of view. And I went, she goes, you got to be kind to everybody. And I went, you got to start with yourself. And it was like this mind-blowing moment for this little kid to go,
Mm.
sorry, what? I can do this for me first. And it was this moment of what are we teaching our kids? Because some of the things we put forward to our children that are standards, we're expecting them to just drop into it. And yes, maybe we've demonstrated it, but if they haven't learnt to meet themselves in it, then how do they give out of that? And I think that's the bigger picture is as clumsy big adults at times. If we haven't met that in ourselves, then how do we give it from somewhere else? So it can end up costing us something if it's not resident within us and we don't have the saucer at hand ready to go. It's like, yeah. So I think kindness does cost us, like
It,
somewhere.
it's a good point. And what you came up for me with you then was I went through something with Taya probably 2 years ago. And there was a little girl in Taya's class who has issues. Like it's very, very obvious she has issues. And Taya had formed a bit of a friendship, but then the friendship took a different turn and it was like physical hurting and not really being very kind. And with Taya's autism, she was like, well, you're telling me this, but you're doing that. And I don't really understand because they're not matching up. And so we had to unpack, what does a friend look like? What does a friend do? Does a friend hurt you? Does mummy hurt you? No. Yeah, because it's not nice and that's not what we do. And we don't express our friendship that way. And so it was about, and then that we resolved that with a teacher who was very, very good. And I said, we need some vocabulary around this. You need a vocabulary wall. Because one of Taya's biggest fears was, if I don't play with her, I'm not being kind. And I'm like, yeah, but we need to also establish some kind boundaries of what you're willing to accept and what you're not willing to accept. And so I worked with the school and they did a vocabulary wall where it was phrases that they could all recognize and attach to that weren't saying, you're not nice, I'm not playing with you. Do you know what I mean? But it was like, thank you, but I'm already busy today. So, you know what I mean? So it's like all different ways of saying no, but kindly saying no. Because, yeah, I think there is an element of that running through it, Deirdre, where you're going, yes, let's be kind and let's be inclusive. And I'm a big advocate for that, especially having kids that don't automatically assimilate in that way socially because they've got their own little quirks going on and they need that extra support. But even with conversations in the school about the school being more inclusive, I've also said, but I don't want any child to be forced to be friends with my child. What I do want is to us work collaboratively on creating a conversation and opportunities for them to connect in different ways and have a different understanding of what that looks like, right? So it's complex.
Yeah.
Yes.
Beautiful. Well, we've obviously talked about a big topic again. It's on the hour. So is there anything that anybody would like to say? I think everything that you've shared today is so relevant and so needed. Is there any last minute things that you would like to just wrap this up with?
Just a quick one. Just one more thing. That's my thing.
5 more minutes. 5 more minutes.
Another 5. Just roll it up. What came to me through all of that as well is like talking about the cup and filling it and half filling it and working from all these different levels. It can also work. It also works in a way. It just got me thinking about how many times I've been coaching or running a class or a workshop or something, and going into it, I felt like crap. I felt stressed, tired, not wanting to be there. And then after doing the thing of being in service, I felt amazing. I felt the energy was back and my cup was full again. So in part of being the kindness is still a selfish thing and giving back to yourself. And when you're coming from a place of service, it gives the people you're serving energy and the kindness comes through that. And then it's also replaying back to you. So you get full circle there. It's not like giving. It's like giving and receiving and serving and, being selfish in that respect of, I'm helping you to help me. I'm getting motivated by helping you and seeing you have your breakthroughs or things like that. And I did hear that one time, and the best, I can't remember who said it, but it was just a simple plot. It was saying, you want motivation, go and be of service. You want energy, go and serve. Go and be a part of humanity and be a part of connecting with other people and serving. And that would be that kind of kindness. It's not a forced, it's semi-forced sometimes because you're like, I don't want to do it. You know, have your little tantrum, tire tantrum. It's like, I don't want to play anymore. But you step in to go, well, you know, I'm here for this reason. This is what I'm here to do and do your service. And then from that, your energy flows. And so I think in sort of that momentum is to keep your cup full, serve and be of purpose with the kindness that you're offering. When you're in that authentic state, then you'll notice a difference in your energy. So you're not depleting, you're enhancing everyone and including yourself.
I think that's really important, Paul, and because sometimes it's about knowing, right? So it's like I don't want to get up early and go to the gym, even though if I do it, I'm going to feel better. Sometimes we have to push ourselves to do the thing because we know that it's ultimately for our own good. And I think where the disconnect comes in is people are thinking, well, what does my intuition say? What should I be doing here? And they confuse courage and comfort, and they think, oh, well, you know, that doesn't feel comfortable for me. Maybe that's a no. Hold on. That's not a no. That's you getting in your own way. Like that's you. That's not you. That's you having to be courageous and putting yourself out there and jumping in and doing the thing because you know it's good for you, even though you don't want to get out of bed because it's fucking freezing and it's, you know, like whatever. Like that's the difference. So, right? Is this for my ultimate good? Is this gonna, because I'm the same as you. There are times where I'm like, oh, have I got it today? And then I get there and I'm like, and I'm on, and it's great, and I feel really good at the end of it. But I think the difference is, are we doing it and it's not going to serve us, or are we doing it and it is going to serve us? And saying yes to the ones that ultimately are for our own good and other people's, and saying no to the ones where we're going to be left without, where it's actually going to deplete us further into a place where it then affects the other people in our life. Because being uncomfortable with something is not a problem. It's just uncomfortable, you know, and we've got to learn to push through that piece when it's for our best purpose. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not getting up and going to the gym at 4:30 in the morning. That is not happening. Right. It probably should, but it's not. Right. But there are other spaces where, you know, we all need to do that thing too, right? Like, yeah. But that's the difference, I think, Paul, you know, what you're saying, it's good.
Yeah, and I think with that intuition piece, it's you get to know the nuanced responses of your nervous system, which is this is don't go, like alarms, this is not good, like trust your gut, this is not good. And I've been there many times and I trust my gut, even if it's not logical. I always trust my gut, and I always find out afterwards, yeah, I'm glad I didn't go into that because that happened with them and I'm glad I didn't do it. But as you said, it's the uncomfortableness of it, you know, is part of the process, you know, but it's really getting to know yourself on which one means, because you don't want to be pushing through alarm bells, but you can definitely push through discomfort, absolutely, as we're all living it and breathing it on this call.
Yeah. And I think that shifts the I guess the paradigm or the behind the meaning of kindness, instead of in certain books and things and people saying that you must be kind to everyone, but then it's forced, but then it's the energy and the meaning behind kindness shifts into authentic space that the offering is happening. I think that's an important part.
And I think as well, Paul, to your point, there's a difference between nice and kind. You know, I'm not nice. Like, I'm not going to blow smoke up your butt.
We need a whole other session on that.
Yeah. But, you know, nice and kind is different. Like, I'm not a nice person. Like, if you're going to mess up my boundaries and stuff, I'm going to say no, but I'm going to do it kindly.
Love it.
Yeah. So I
that.
will be kind with my boundaries, but I've got my boundaries. Like, oh, you're not going to walk all over me, you know, and they have tried, especially the small ones. They do try, but I'm like, it's not going to happen. It's not working. Yeah, the smaller humans. Anyway, thank you so much, guys. Thank you for being here. Thank you for watching and being part of the Backyard Peace Project. I hope this conversation has helped you. I'm going to be adding the hashtag kindness counts so that it becomes part of the campaign, because I think this is a really important conversation to have. So thanks, everybody. Keep an eye on what we're doing, because there's some exciting things happening, which we'll be posting about shortly. And we will see you next week.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
See ya.